morning.
And good afternoon, all. And the project I'll be speaking about is the Cadence Square Veterans Housing Project. We too are upstate New York. My agency is FLACRA, the Finger Lakes Addictions Counseling Referral Agency, as Matt introduced. And I sure want to just do a shout out and thank you to all veterans in this room and those two on the panel that have served. And honestly, as the next story tells in a lot of the images, for my agency, a substance abuse treatment agency, I'll stay with these images just because the guy in the upper right is my director of treatment services, who has been with me for 30 years, and obviously he was a Vietnam vet. And the gentleman on the lower left is my public relations father. And I think the point I'm trying to make is, for who FLACRA is. We are and have been an alcohol substance abuse treatment agency in rural counties of Wayne, Ontario, Seneca, Yates, Schuyler, the Finger Lakes of upstate New York. And really, the movement beyond us being an outpatient and residential treatment provider, we've had all kinds of community residences, all kinds of crisis centers, all kinds of outpatient clinics. Obviously always serving veterans, because there's no question that veterans are part of the alcohol and substance abuse treatment community. But what we were really finding every day and suffering every day is that these individuals were graduating successfully our treatment programs and then finding themselves in substandard housing arrangements and then cycling back through and cycling back through and cycling back through. And that's what really got us into housing, and that's what really got us most sensitive to veterans and veteran needs. So really the story of development for Cadence Square, we are on the Canandaigua VA campus. So as Ben was speaking and as we've been speaking, we sure have a close relationship with the VA. Differently, we have both going on. We have the VA in our facilities because we too have a project-based HUD-VASH arrangement. For us, of the 43 units we have, 12 of them are project-based. The rest of them are non-project-based. And we have the VA staff in our facilities as a result and a gift of that, but we are on federal land. We are on the VA campus. The VA is our police department. The VA is our fire department. I gotta say, they're a darn good police department and a darn good, very accessible fire department. When anything happens, it ain't far to go to be at our place. But what was really going on in 2009, as some of you know, throughout past years, they've been looking to close VA campuses around the country. And this was one of the campuses slated to close. And it looked like that was a sure thing to happen. And you'll see images of Senator Schumer in a moment, but and at that time it was Senator Clinton, really with the politics that came and were brought to bear in the community. They managed to save the campus with the stipulation that these unutilized buildings would be utilized. And that's where we came in. They put together the CARES panel, they put out an RFP, they said, we got this building, that's that building on the left, that was an old building, I mean it's not a lot different now. They identified a need. FLACRA, my agency, has had decades of relationships with the VA because we've always served veterans back and forth. While FLACRA is a housing developer, small time, not big time. My budget matches Ben's budget, $11.5 million. I wasn't ready to bite off that, so I have a friend out in Buffalo, Casanova Recovery, also a residential treatment agency. She has done tax credit projects. Tax credit, has been hinted, is pretty intensive stuff, so brought her in as a partner, got the award, for the development of transitional housing, and what we have going is called an enhanced use lease. So this is not a veteran project. This is a private nonprofit agency that now has a 75-year or forevermore lease with the VA up for this property. It's our property. It's virtually our property plopped onto the VA campus. And the plan was to renovate this building. And for us, that wasn't sufficient because we wanted to do more than transitional housing. As is being said, and as I said in the story, our graduates of our programs clearly needed affordable housing as well. So we went through all kinds of support and presentations all over. This is small town stuff. This is Canandaigua, New York. This is, everybody's neighbor, brother, sister, uncle know exactly what's going on. And, you got to do it grassroots. You got to get out to every Legion, every VFW, every service organization, every mayor, every, town supervisor. Very grassroots stuff. The VA campus has our particular building, this new building we're going to build, borders on this one very lovely rural street, and those East Street neighbors had a lot to say. And that's Senator Schumer up in the left there, and Assemblyman Brian Colebrook, the guy with one of the guys in the shot on the right there, and all kinds of, grassroots and high level. I mean, that's the point. It goes from, the local veteran at the local Legion to Senator Schumer to pull this project together. And timetable, not a lot different than Ben's story. This is really pretty, this is brand new stuff. Our construction began in October 2012, took us 13 months. So November 2013, construction's complete, available for occupancy December 2013, and 2 months later, we're completely full. I mean, the need was and is tremendous. That shot is our groundbreaking. You can see some construction shots. This thing on the bottom right is a rotunda. This project, the architect, the symbolism for veterans is all over the architecture. And as far as our development team, it's Flapaquette and Casanova. So, some of you, again, like myself, if you're looking at projects, don't be afraid to bring somebody else in to help you. The co-ownership and the legal structure that brought this together is a limited partnership that is just tremendous. So we are literally the co-owners, but Flacpa is the sole operator. Casanova didn't want to have anything to do with the operation of this thing. So now she's virtually gone, and we're operating it, and an architect out of Buffalo, and you got to have a development consultant. You get the picture that Ben is a one-stop house kind of thing. That's not true for us. We need an outside consultant as a private nonprofit service agency, not a development agency. And Christie Construction, we sure had to find a local construction firm because nobody was going to tolerate, anything but this being local, small town, although Christie's a huge company.
You're not supposed to mention other attorneys on the panel, so we'll skip over that. Okay.
Of course not. I didn't. And I didn't mention the attorney, but the name's up there for those of you, and I'm going to go right past it.
Hey, let me ask a question before you go on to the budget. So, it sounds like this is a private, nonprofit, private partnership on this deal, right,
Yeah.
Casanova, and that can also often be very difficult. Sounds like you had a pretty good relationship on this one, but were there any challenges on, because you have guarantee issues, you have control issues?
The agreement issues were huge, but it's exactly as Matt is saying, is that for us, what got us through that was, the relationship, the similarity, the sisterhood and brotherhood of being chemical dependency service agencies, although different geography. We didn't know each other real well, but, sitting in on some of these care panel discussions and getting to know each other. So yeah, relationship and trust and integrity, and negotiation.
working out the details at
and
the
working that
front
out.
end, yeah.
It is huge.
Okay.
And how do you split the developer fee? How do you do this? How do you do that? What do you want to do about this? What do you want to do about that? It is huge. But it's fun. That makes it a lot of fun and heartwarming in lots of ways. So, Ben's project was complicated in terms of funding packages. This is, as it says at the top, leveraging. It's always, and I'm sure Ben and many of you experience, it's, who's going to blink first? So, you're going after a tax credit investor, and Key Bank is wonderfully, gratefully our investor, but you're also going after, this is like Ben's is an $11.5 million project, and we were not going to make it work with just the investor, so we needed other funds from HCR. We needed HHAP, Homeless Housing Assistance Program under OTDA in New York State. Everybody loves veterans, and everybody wanted this project to work, but nobody was really willing to be the first to say, we'll put our $2 million in there, we'll put our $3 million in there. So it was, constant phone calls and meetings and get them at the table and get somebody to blink first. And my own state agency, I sure love my state agency, New York State Office of Alcohol and Substance Abuse, but you got to see here that this is a mostly substance abuse project. The new construction buildings are not just for substance abusers, but they weren't even going to come in with anything. Now they got the smallest pockets. These other guys have deeper pockets, but getting them to say, okay, we need to come in. This is a substance abuse project. So New York State Oasis, VA Milcon funds. That was a big lift because this is military construction. So everybody's going like, what does this have to do with military construction? And we're going like, it has everything to do with military construction.
That trigger.
And Senator Schumer was critical in helping, translate this to being a great resource for Milcon funds. And I'm sorry.
Did that trigger Davis-Bacon?
And it did.
Yeah.
It does trigger. And I probably should have shared with Matt and Brett the Davis-Bacon nightmare that we went through because HCR set one set of rates when they coincidentally were publishing and we were going forward, and then a new set of rates came out, but we had already signed the contract with the construction company, so that was very complicated. And we went with Federal Home, if you don't know, you should be looking at Federal Home Loan Bank and the Affordable Housing Program as a resource. And we too deferred some of our developer fee, and we too, like Ben spoke, are a very green project and got some NYSERDA incentives. But when you look at this list, it's pretty complicated. And what it really is when now you're down to construction management, you know what that is. Now you got everybody at the table every week during construction, going over every, brick and nail and board. And that table, when you got all those funders, was just crazy. I mean, you know how it is. They drag out a construction trailer. We had to, they had no construction office in the construction trailer because our construction table was the whole length of the trailer. So when we, after our meetings, they broke down the table and converted it back to their office, and this is a huge table, and it's every player that we spoke of, and then you got the Canandaigua VA in there wanting to make sure that whatever goes on their lovely campus is going to be lovely in every way, shape, and form. So in terms of, as we've been speaking, the HUD-VASH piece is critical to the service development plan and operational funding. And ours comes through the Rochester Housing Authority, and went through the exact story that Ben told. These projects take a long time. We had no assurance that this was going to fly. The Rochester Housing Authority put out its RFP, and we had to say, we want in, wonderfully, they ready to give us the award, and we're saying it's going to be 18 months, and wonderfully so, they were patient with that. So, what we've got going in the renovated building is what's called the Safe Haven Community Residence. This is transitional housing for substance abusers. So this is a licensed program, a treatment program, a residential treatment program. And honestly, we thought we were going to cut and paste it with what's called VA grant and per diem, a source that you should well be aware of. It's the VA's operational funding source for transitional housing. So if you haven't gone after that, you should, although last year they temporarily switched gears and put it into that which isn't transitional housing. So we were going to patchwork the operations funding, but then the VA nationally came along. You know what safe havens are. Safe havens are, surely housing first model. Veteran homeless right off the street moves right in, and he's yours, and he gets to do much of anything he wants, because you really can't tell him that he has to go to treatment. Now, for my agency, I got to tell you, Matt said, 30 plus years in substance abuse treatment work, and now I got a house full of veterans that don't have to go to treatment. And that's very interesting, but it's wonderful. It is wonderful. It is wonderful to be able to take people in the very worst of state and bring them into your home and work with them in every way. So therefore, that's coming mostly out of the VA homeless team, which our VA friends here are very familiar with. And then in that same building upstairs, we've got what's called supportive living, which is, so this is a continuum of care campus. What we really tried to build is, safe haven, start out, supportive living. You can live there for 6 months to a year, you get your own little apartment, very little apartment, and we're watching you, but you got your own apartment, but we're still watching you, and you're going to treatment, maybe. But, so that's the supportive living stuff. That's patchwork funded by, and I think many of you know about congregate care funding through social service districts. In other words, it's an enhanced welfare payment that they give for the support you are providing. And then we've got the newly renovated building. So, on the right there is the shot of the newly renovated building. This is our new construction building. 17 units, new construction. So as you saw in the opening shot, these are almost adjoining buildings. They don't quite adjoin. Magnificent architecture. Lots of, again, veteran symbolism all over the architecture. And now you see the units. These were built with 10-foot ceilings in the apartments, which, usually HCR and HHAP don't like you to do that or let you do that. But again, you can get away with a lot of things, wonderfully so, when you're serving a population so in need and so deserve. Again, it's a tax credit program, 50% area median income is the eligibility requirement. I should have gone back. The supportive living is 30%. So that's serving really, when you're down to 30% area median income, you're serving a more, just about most entirely a homeless population, and a population that's got no resources. And really, the veteran service experience for us, again, we had been in it in our treatment universe, but to now be in it in the way that we're in it, especially with the safe haven, is heartwarming, heartbreaking, very challenging, very difficult for some staff members. We've honestly had very high turnover in staff, at least in our safe haven. The rest of the programs are going just great. But in the safe haven, it's just a tough group for staff to be able to work with that aren't up to the challenge. So if you're going to, of course, working with veterans is in and of itself a wonderful challenge, but working with veterans in a true housing first model is further challenging. And recruitment and retention of that staff, and Brett was speaking earlier of a workshop he attended during this thing of, how do you support your staff and keep your staff motivated and going, and this is very much a challenge in that. But, that's again Assemblyman Brian Kolb on the bottom right. And honestly, for all the politics that he was doing, he's at our bingo games. He's at, this is again small town stuff, and he's in there, just enjoying with the veterans, having lunch and dinner with the veterans at times. I mean, he is a veteran himself, and it brought out a lot of the politicians who are veterans and got them to speak and tell their stories in ways that, again, I've known these politicians for decades, and for most of them I never even knew they were veterans, and I sure never knew their stories, and I sure never knew the depth of their stories and their veteran service experience. So it's just been, great in all of that. Say for us, we had no money for furniture. Honestly, as most projects, budget went way over. And while there was furniture and furnishings in the budget, that's the first thing that disappeared from the budget. So we needed a capital campaign, a community capital campaign, to raise money for the furniture and furnishings, and we're mostly there. Furniture and furnishings are all in there, but we haven't paid for them. So we're still working our capital campaign to do that. Groundbreaking and ribbon cutting, you saw, had Senator Schumer and every dignitary around in it. This has just been such a profile boost for our agency. Again, to be a substance abuse treatment agency with a medium profile, we were a $5.5 million agency, now we're a $7 million annual agency, but the boost in our profile and image in the community has been, just great. And future funding, in terms of other projects we're now up to and how everybody loves us because of what we did here. We're doing tours every day and every other day. People are coming through to check this project out. But at the same time, this complicated funding structure and being on the VA campus now, our reporting, and you sure know all about reporting as part of your job as whatever you're doing, is so complicated with all of the funders, all of the regulators, and we need full-time people to just do that, and we can't afford the full-time people to just do that. And the publicity has just been tremendous, in our area. It ain't the New York Times. There are lots of local papers, and every local paper was featuring stories left and right on this kind of stuff, and more the human interest stories in the faces of the veterans that are participating. And that's been fantastic.
We have a few minutes for questions before we go to Brett. We'll start with the audience first. Any questions for Marty? In the back?
My name is Kathy from Mansion Group. My colleague is opening a building this year for practically vouchers for veterans. And you talked about some of the challenges that the staff has encountered. Obviously, our staff can be clinical staff, but can you talk a little bit more about those challenges and what, if any, is being done to address the supporting staffing at your particular residence?
I'm sorry, the challenges,
Staffing, the staff.
the staffing challenges. So again, I'll say the staffing challenge is mostly related to the Safe Haven program. So I think it's the staffing challenge has been met in part by extraordinary training. And we've really, normally we bring people in, we throw them in the job, and everything just goes fine because they have a good resume and they have some experience. That's not the case here. So now we bring people in. De-escalation training is huge, real huge, and that kind of training, and we've got and fire safety training is huge. Housing First, beautiful building. One of the veterans just literally takes his cigarette and places it on a roll of toilet paper that he just brought back from the store, and, you know, we have a little fire, and thank God we have a fire department right on the campus there. So every kind of training you can think of related to serving a very difficult population, a population that has extensive co-occurring disorders, mental health, substance abuse, physical disabilities. So the training necessary to work with that population, the training necessary to work with a very aggressive population, the training necessary to work with a very suicidal lethality risk population. So lethality risk training. So the answer really in the meeting the challenge or trying to meet the challenge is training, training, training. The other is selection. You know, finding people that you just got to be straight with them and walk them right through the story. If you walk around in the Safe Haven for 15 minutes, you know. So that's what we do now. We walk around the Safe Haven with our employees that we're interviewing, and when the veterans don't respond and don't talk and are in the hallway yelling and screaming at each other, people self-select. And that's I'm not describing a bad thing, I'm describing a beautiful thing. It's beautiful in all that it is, but it's very challenging for staff, and they need to know what they're getting into, and they need to be supported.
Over here on the right? Or,
How would you say you're different from individuals who have regular co-occurring disorders, substance use, folks who have...
Yeah, I think PTSD is, nobody can deny that how huge PTSD.
PTSD, so how are they different?
I think I have to
Intensity
say
level.
the aggressive level, the level of aggression and violence and the potential for aggression and violence is much greater. And the PTSD, and right on, please, substance abuse, we know from trauma. It ain't like, our clients didn't come out of trauma families and trauma life. So we've been doing trauma-based care forever. But it is different. It is, and I think it's mostly the military PTSD and that stuff, yeah.
Sorry, one more question. How would you address the staffing patterns similar to what this young lady was asking around military cultural competency? How would you prepare your staff program?
Well, one is to employ veterans, but and I do say, but the turnover there has been real too. Veterans who now are, we thought, okay, well, let's just hire veterans, but they're being re-traumatized in a lot of what we're seeing. And so they're walking. They're not walking. We'll just move them over to one of our non-veteran programs. That re-trauma, hiring veterans, we thought was the absolute way to go. In fact, the program manager, female veteran, first program manager we hired for the Safe Haven, that was very re-traumatizing for her. So now we've replaced her with a non-veteran, and we think it's working out. All this stuff, as Ben's saying, is brand new. These are brand new programs, so we'll see.
you have 3 populations in
Yeah.
that building. I'm curious, I know it's early in the, I think you started leasing up a couple months ago, right? But have you seen where are there differences? Are the populations, do they isolate themselves, or
They do. So, and that's not unique for us. We do different population stuff. So the affordable housing apartment guys, we would wish for them to be more, because we really believe in all this, the program language stuff there, but for the grace of God go I, and the benefit of mentorship, and the benefit of Big Brother stuff. But that has, it's interesting, that is not as smoothly coming together as those catchphrases sound. And those in the affordable housing project having, they see what's going on in the Safe Haven, and they're just saying, I need to stay clear. I just need to stay, some of them.
You didn't think about interspersing them throughout the building? That wasn't an option?
Well, in the renovated building, at least the 2 transitional components are dispersed, and in fact, although they have their own apartment upstairs, that little apartment thing, they do come down for the community dinner, in part because they don't, they may not feel like making dinner that night.
Okay, thank you very much, Marty.